In this research, I will dive deep into the term Orientalism in popular music, performance, and culture, with a focus on the dancers that go along with the show, the importance of getting immersed into the culture and its origins, and how we can use the term Orientalism properly for commercial and promotional purposes. I will provide theoretical information and a few examples to highlight some misconceptions displayed in popular culture, music, dance, and basically arts in general. At the same time, I would like to conclude giving some advice on how we can do better to promote artistic concepts inspired by Orientalism in a more respectful and empathetic way. The reason I choose this topic is because I'm studying a bachelor's degree in music business at the university. And personally, I feel like the production and promotion of live events and shows is a part of the business that I really would like to develop further. At the same time, I'm a Bellydance instructor and I feel like the proposed topic will help me to understand the ideas and values that underlie when producing multicultural events that want to incorporate Orientalism specifically as an element of expression and creativity. What is Orientalism? Orientalism is a term coined by the academic Edward Said after publishing his book Orientalism in 1978, which is a critique of modern Europeans' colonialism. But who is Edward Said and why is his opinion so important? Edward Said was one of the most important cultural critics of the late 20th century. He was a Palestinian American academic and political activist. He was considered the founder of the post-colonial theory. Post-colonial studies try to understand how and why colonized countries developed the way they did in a post-colonial era. Said was born in 1935 in the British Mandate of Palestine. His mother was Palestinian and his father was Palestinian American. Edward Said grew up in Jerusalem and then Cairo, where his family had it in the aftermath of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Said was educated mainly at top British and American schools. Even though he had the opportunity and access to a great education, he lived some difficult situations during his formation years. After he was expelled from Egypt's Victoria College in 1951, he was sent to an elite boarding school in Massachusetts in the United States. At that time, Western universities were not multicultural. He was considered both an outsider and an insider, which gave him a different intellectual perspective from his colleagues. Despite being very unhappy in college, Said's intelligence was very prominent and he moved on to study at the prestigious Princeton University, before gaining his PhD in English literature from Harvard University in 1964. By that time, he was already serving as an academic at Columbia University in the Department of English and Comparative Literature. From 1963 onwards, he spent the rest of his life at Columbia University until 2003 when he died. Edward Said's main achievement was promoting and establishing colonialism as an area of study in the humanities. Said's work in Orientalism was designed to show that the academic world was closely connected to the system of political power. In the book, he argues that colonialism was not only a system of political rule, but also a worldview that simply believed that the West was superior to the East. In other words, Edward Said developed the term Orientalism to describe how Europeans and Americans portrayed the Orient as inferior, barbaric, uncivilized, mysterious, and all around weird. Simultaneously, he also argued that this was about defining Europe as the Orient's completely opposite, meaning superior, civilized, and all around wonderful. Orientalism, then, is the form of knowledge in quotation marks that authorizes and justifies the assertion of Western power over the East, acting like a pair of glasses that distort your vision and exaggerate cultural and religious difference. With these glasses, just about everything and everyone seems highly exotic and strange, or worse, fanatical and dangerous. Here are some examples of Orientalism in popular culture.
Oh, I come from a land, from a faraway place, where the caravan camels roam. Where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
Captain Nelson landed on an island in the South Pacific where he found a bottle. At least it looked like a bottle, but it didn't act like a bottle. Because in it was a genie. Oh, not your average everyday genie, but a beautiful genie who could grant any wish. Captain Nelson was so grateful, he set Jeannie free. Only she didn't want to be free. You know how it is when you've been cooped up in a bottle for 2,000 years.
Something connected.
And I assure you, this will never happen again in my kingdom.
If I offended you, then I am sorry.
Ah, dessert. Chilled monkey brain.
So let's recap. The term Orientalism explores the impact of colonialism and Western perceptions of countries that have been colonized. We can think about it as an exaggerated stereotype of the East. Before we can examine Orientalism in the field of dance and performance, we must understand a few relevant topics. First of all, what is the Middle East? The Middle East, from an European and American perspective, is a region that encompasses southwestern Asia and northern Africa. In some contexts, the term has been expanded to include Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Caucasus and Central Asia, and North Africa. According to this book, the corresponding adjective is Middle Eastern, and the derived noun is Middle Easterner. However, the term that became popular, even used by those in the region, is Middle East. For those that really want to get immersed in this, I really recommend reading this book in more detail. In this book, written by Jamila Salimpur, a pioneer Bellydance researcher in America, she describes how the image of the Middle Eastern dancer was perceived at the turn of the 20th century. She states that Middle Eastern dancers who appeared on the streets of Cairo at the Chicago World Fair in 1893 were Western women who claimed to have Arab ancestry to create an air of credibility and mystery. Censorship and negative publicity aroused curiosity and brought in the crowds. Mythical characters like the dancer Little Egypt raised a lot of attention, even when there is not physical documentation or proof that she really existed. 20 years later, after the Chicago's World's Fair, American women were photographed semi-nude in a seat, a silver Egyptian cloth purchased by merchants at the fair. Another example mentioned in the book is the silent film Salome, an adaptation of Oscar Wilde's play from 1891. In the film, Salome performs the infamous dance of the Seven Veils, which is also a fantasy, product of the play. It should be noted that Oscar Wilde was Irish and the first version of the play was in French. There are plenty of examples in these books and I highly recommend them, especially for dancers, producers, and event promoters that want to study more about the origins of belly dance in America and other misconceptions that are still in vogue today. Whether we like it or not, we have to recognize a statement made by Edward Said himself. Anyone who teaches, writes about, or researches the Orient should be considered an Orientalist. This applies whether the person is an anthropologist, a sociologist, an historian, or philosophist, either in its specific or its general aspects. This person should be considered an Orientalist, and what he or she does is Orientalism. Now, having this in consideration and all the details I found in my research, I consider that the first thing people need to do when producing, promoting, choreographing, or whatever we are doing related to the Orient, the thing we all need to do is to educate ourselves, educate yourselves, travel if possible, and keep an open mind. Reading the book Orientalism to understand how media and colonialism intersect is a really good start. From a dancer or choreographer perspective, I recommend doing research about vernacular dances in the different regions of the Orient that we would like to represent on stage. And at the same time understand that if you study belly dance academically in a dance school, in a dance studio, in a dance academy, what you're doing is Orientalism, and we need to be humble enough to accept it. From a music business perspective, as a producer or promoter, I think the ethical thing to do is to educate the audience, applying proper distinctions between what is reality and what is fantasy. If you want to attract the crowds, be smart with the wording you are using and make sure that you are not offending anyone. Familiarize yourself with the concept of cultural appropriation and make your promotional copywriting aware of this, especially when the source community are minority groups that have been exploited, oppressed, humiliated, or when the object of appropriation is particularly sensitive. To understand the concept of cultural appropriation, I really recommend this lecture by Donna Mejia, which is online. I'm gonna leave all the links below. Finally, no matter the area of study you are involved in, I think we all should keep in mind that it's very important, necessary, and ethical to try to differentiate how we portray the Middle East artistically, if the portrayal we are working on is authentic, or if it's an outdated, racist, and Orientalist fantasy. And if it actually is a fantasy, let's call it by its name and let's educate the audience. Let's make sure they understand that what they're watching is not authentic, it's made up, and that they know it. My name is Jeka Cedeño Area, and this was my research on Orientalism in popular music, performance, and culture, with a focus on the dancers as a main part of the show and promotion. Thank you.